Hey. Now we got sound. I just did a live stream and there was no sound because I realized that it was connecting via Bluetooth to my headphones, which were in my pocket. So, nobody's in the chat just yet. I thought I'd throw some cards for us all, deliver some messages. The chosen ones, light workers, empaths, star seeds. If you do find this live stream after its conclusion, I will be doing readings, which you can find on my website, entpgathering.com. I'm an MBTI certified practitioner and an NLP certified practitioner. First card out, 9 of Swords. It was in the reverse. Gemini energy. 9 is a number of completion. I'm picking up karmic energy. Hope you're all doing well. So 9 of Swords in reverse. Somebody is really feeling some mental anguish, anxiety. 9 of Cups in the upright. One of the last readings I did on here, a live stream, told us that for some of our karmics, there was a karmic couple who were going through a divorce and also an overindulgence in drinking and all the bad stuff that we as light workers avoid. You know, often as light workers, we mirror back the healing necessary to people who are just awakening to spiritual warfare, awakening to what's going on the planet. 9 of Pentacles on the bottom of the deck. 3 9s. No coincidences. This is you, collective. Virgo energy. Very creative, very abundant, very nurturing, and self-healing. Energetic opposites to 9 of Swords in reverse and 9 of Cups. Tell us more, Spirit. Page of Pentacles. Maybe some of the karmics are getting a new chance at creating a foundation after this 9 of Swords in reverse energy that they're going through. Let's hope so. All we can do is send out good energy, especially if, like you, in the recent past, in the last 48, I've been feeling a lot of energy from those who are just awakening to their own spiritual path. You know, as light workers, I prophesy that a lot of your karmic relationships, twin flame, false twin flame, karmic relationships, past life relationships, who have been sending out a lot of negative energy to you. You know, as a light worker, we can easily transmute that, but it's no easy feat, especially if like some of you, or like myself, some of you are getting hit from multiple angles by multiple parties. But that these are lessons that we need to go through. These are energies that we are learning to transmute. And for myself, speaking for myself, it's so much easier anymore to transmute those energies and send them back to the sender. Because what people who are sending negative energy to us don't realize is that it's simply projection on their part. And how I understand and feel projection is that, for example, in the trauma bond, when you meet somebody that you are energetically attracted to, uh, in a way, that's and let's say it's a narcissist, and you're the empath. Um, what draws you both together is similar early childhood woundings, and there's a magnetic, almost uncontrollable passion that draws you together with them. What the narcissist doesn't understand, and you as the chosen one, as the light worker, as the empath, should understand by now, is that it's all projection that brings us together. It's even you, because you have to take responsibility for the coupling. It's looking at the other, in this case the narcissist, and seeing in them um, something that is inherent within you, and vice versa. But it's harder for the narcissist to understand this, because in a way they've undergone much more intense narcissistic wounding than the empath. We have learned to transmute those energies, often being led through that process by the higher ups, by our spirit guides, by our ancestors, and by our higher self, our higher mind and spirit. So understand that what draws the empath and the narcissist together is simple projection on both of our parts. But again, the narcissist doesn't understand this, and when confronted with that possibility, they they fear rejection, they fear abandonment, um, and there's a inherent distrust that they have within themselves, because um, their subconscious is telling them that it's true what we're saying. It's true that they're simply projecting what they already have inside them onto their partner, in this case, the chosen one, the light worker, the empath, because they're seeing in their 3D reality something in us that they wish they had, not knowing it's projection and not knowing that it's already within them. So it's best if you do form a trauma bond and you become aware of it early on, um, as the empath, as the light worker, to speak your truth, explain what's going on, and then get the F out of there as quickly as possible, because the narcissist will have to go inside in order to heal. And it's the old saying is you can't change anybody, and it's absolutely true. Um, I firmly believe that everybody outside of me is simply a reflection of me, and vice versa. But it's harder, like I said, for the narcissist to understand this and then deal with that subconscious um, mess that they have within them, because they want to hold on to the union, because the energy is so recognizable between two of them. I see one in the chat, or in the live stream. Pop your name and say hi into the chat. Oh, we got another visitor. We're just here talking about light workers and talking about the empath narcissist paradigm. Jolie, yes. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. My INTP friend. and subscriber to my channel. I hope. Um, so I was just talking about um, the empath and the narcissist paradigm, and how we attract each other usually into trauma bonds. And I think out on YouTube and in various people who are of some sort of repute, I'm thinking of Dr. Ramani, who does a lot of helpful videos on. It certainly helped me understand the narcissist better. Um, I find that there's too much of a beating up of the narcissist. There's too much on these experts' parts of not realizing that they are still suffering through and working through their own narcissistic wounding, right? So they paint the narcissist as incurable. They paint the narcissist as one to be ostracized and shunned. Here's what I learned about my toxic bonds and the toxic bond relationships that I've been in. Yeah, Richard Gannon as well. Maybe with him it's less so on my part. I'm glad that you brought his name up. I think both of them have huge followings on YouTube, and they've done a lot for to help all of us, especially those of us who are empaths, light workers, and more on the sensitive side. Understand how to gray rock the narcissist, how to decouple from that relationship. But still, and let me know what you think. I think that Dr. Ramani and probably to a degree Richard Gannon are yet suffering from narcissistic wounding, and that's why I wish for both of them in their content that they put out that they would open up and talk more about how their empathic side helped heal them, and I think in the future there's a way where, especially if both parties in the trauma bond can honestly own their own part in the coupling, I think that you can heal and still remain somewhat energetically attached. Tent, Tentacle croissant. That's a crazy name. Um, I'll check it out. Um, what do you think about trauma bonds? Have you ever been in one? And as empaths, as light workers, as the what is it? The anxious avoidant personality or attachment style. So a lot of this has to do with attachment style, does it not? So you have your healthy attachment style. This is people who, it's 50% of the population. I think it correlates very close to, say, the divorce rate. Although we know that people, the younger generation, thank goodness, aren't getting married. Like that old paradigm that came from post World War II, the baby boomers. Graduate high school, go to college, meet your man or your husband or your wife, and have your 2.5 kids, the dogs, the cat, and then you're done. You're never going to change jobs because the idea is to retire as soon as you can, buy your home, all that stuff. Well, that's dead. The American dream was a lie from the very beginning, and the younger generation now have realized that, and they're not going to play into that game, because ultimately that's just to support capitalist society. That's to support the big corporations and government, right? So attachment style. Um, you can have a healthy attachment style, which means that you were born into a family of caretakers and were witness to healthy modeling. Yeah, it's a pyramid scheme. Exactly. Um, the American dream is a freaking pyramid scheme. So true. It's funny. I mean, I'm glad I can laugh now. Justice on the bottom of the deck. Libra energy. Libra rules the seventh house. It's all about relationships. So we're on point in this chat. So you have a healthy attachment style. You have modeled in your early childhood um, healthy relationships, or maybe not so healthy relationships, but enough that you can establish your own or learn how to establish your own healthy boundaries for the self and with other people. Boom. Um, but unhealthy attachment styles have poor caretakers who are probably have an unhealthy attachment style themselves. So they weren't successful at modeling good behaviors and good building of. I'm looking at your emoji. Um, you know, I was certainly never witness to good, healthy relationships growing up. So I had to teach myself through many, many, many toxic relationships because I was born without any sort of boundaries. And as a Taurus, I'm just unconditionally loving. So I woke up in gosh, it was a trauma bond that I formed with I think he's a Leo or a Cancer, maybe a Leo or Cancer Leo cusper. And um, it was a friendly attachment that became toxic. Um, and I think trauma bonds can be formed with romantic and platonic relationships, just relationships in general, that should be balanced out. So born without boundaries as I was, and being a Taurus, being unconditionally loving and giving, I was giving way too much. So I woke up to this fact and realized, holy shit, I'm incredibly dependent or codependent in my relationships. So I had to back off. But this occurred in 2018 when the planet Uranus moved into the sign of Taurus. Uranus rules the 11th house. It rules the sign of Aquarius. It is the planet of radical generational shifting and restructuring. Because Saturn also rules the sign of Aquarius, and we're leaving the sign of, yeah, people pleasing. It is a hell of a drug, um, especially when we're pleasing the narcissist. And it's this sick um, give and take relationship, because as both are blind to the fact that they're caught in this bond. Well, when I woke up to it, I was also learning cognitive functions theory, because the planet Uranus took me down several rabbit holes that I was spending hundreds and now thousands of hours, probably well over, what is the rule, like if you dedicate 10,000 hours to any one um, um, hobby or like, you can become a pro at it, right? Well, two of those were the cycles of Gaia. I'm talking about planet strikes and ancient civilizations. I'm talking about the Great Flood. I've always been interested in archaeology and anthropology and the origins of early man and the human species. The other rabbit hole that I went down was cognitive functions theory. And I have not read one book, one paragraph written by Carl Jung. I simply, I think through YouTube, learned the basic understanding of cognitive functions theory, that we have four cognitive functions that comprise our ego. And then we have four cognitive functions that comprise they comprise our subconscious. They also comprise our shadow self, which Jung himself coined this term, the notion that each of us have underneath our ego or behind our ego, wherever it's found. Um, our ego represents like our sun sign in astrology. our ego is there to protect us, and to make us feel good. And it's what we put out into the world. But I think Jung learned through his subconscious exploration that you can tap into the shadow, and it's not negative stuff. It's comprised of things that we've considered to be dark, like think moon sign, think feminine, dark, receptive energy. Um, but within that, there are kernels or seeds or gems of parts of you that were never allowed to form or work well within the ego because of early childhood conditioning. Um, because of our attachment styles, our caretakers wouldn't allow certain parts of us to exist in that that home, in that environment. So we have to shove them down. We have to hide them. Usually, shame, also guilt forms, and lies deep within us. Jung, in his subconscious exploration, tapped into the shadow self and mined those jewels that he then integrated through the process he called individuation into his ego. He also used tarot and symbology and esoteric knowledge and wisdom. Um, hey, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. We're just talking about attachment style and cognitive functions theory right now. I'm throwing some cards. We're talking about relationships and light workers and chosen ones and trauma bonds. So it's a nice mix in this chat right now. But I was just saying that when Jung did his subconscious exploration, he went in, he mined those jewels that he was never allowed to integrate into his ego. And as an adult, like past the age of 40, probably into his 50s or 60s. I mean, I don't know his complete story because, as I said, I haven't read one book on Jung. I just took his basic idea and explored the cognitive functions and learned the cognitive functions, how they each operated in me, by spending probably about a couple years typing myself and understanding how my particular cognitive functions worked. And it was quite a task because my best or my reported type is INTP, but my best fit type is ENTP. And if you're coming from the MBTI community, you'll know that us ENTPs kind of get a bad rap for being, because our dominant function is extroverted intuition. Um, we see a lot of the connections between objects in our 3D reality. And by objects, I mean people, places, and things. Um, and as an INTP and an ENTP, which share the same four functions, but they're in a different order, I came to the conclusion that I was born, or by the age of 14, which is when our cognitive functions are pretty much set. Um, I was definitely an INTP. For example, with TI as your dominant function, I judged the world all from my introverted thinking function. Um, and with extroverted intuition as my auxiliary function, for example, I love to observe and observe and observe things before I jumped in to try them. There was always this underlying fear that I would make a fool of myself. Um, I weren't smart enough. I wasn't, good enough to participate really in life. And instinctively, I knew that early on, and I that didn't sit well with me. So I by the time I was in high school and early 20s, I consciously made the effort to put myself in situations that I knew I was afraid of. Um, so that meant, as an INTP, you have TI as your dominant function, and your inferior function is FE, extroverted feeling. I recently typed in ISTJ, who have the same dominant and inferior functions, and he's really struggling with the group, right? He's applied for a couple of new jobs. He got one of them, and he quit after like the first week because there was an incident where he was performing a task in front of his coworkers, and being as bright and capable as TI is, it's one of the most intelligent cognitive of the cognitive functions. I think I love it, but it certainly distances you from connecting with the tribe. So he's being observed by a bunch of his coworkers as he's performing a task, and they start laughing, um, and kind of snickering, and he's performing the task, and he feels and understands that he's just doing funny, or he's doing funny. I read your, he's doing the task, but he's also creating a mess. He was pouring something into this like large vessel, this vat thing, and he was spilling part of what he was pouring into it, and it was on the floor, and it was like pooling around. So that's what they were laughing at. And he was just so angry as he was relaying the story to me, and I totally understood it. In those situations, it's like Ti is just screaming, "Why didn't you idiots tell me that I was making a mistake? How can you just sit around and laugh? It makes no sense. It's not logical, but it is so of the feeling judging function." And I explained to him, okay, look, was the mistake a big deal? Did the company lose lots of money? Was anyone hurt? None of that occurred, obviously. There was just a spillage on the ground, right? It was his own embarrassment, and his own feeling of TI, um, and the distance from the group. So, he wasn't able to understand that, for them, it was probably no big deal. It was just sort of funny because another thing was that everybody knew him to be incredibly capable. He's very, very smart. So I think in them, and I explained this to him, maybe this is a possibility. You are so capable. You can be shown to do something or how to do something like once or maybe twice, or you can observe it and jump right in and do it like almost perfectly, if not perfectly. And so when the tribe witnesses somebody who's a TI dominant make a mistake, it's a big deal for them because they they really long for that ability to simply observe something and jump in and execute it perfectly. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. He went out and he applied for a new job. Um, but I've learned anymore that I can't offer up help to people um, without asking permission. I have to be really careful because also, and maybe Jolie, you can relate to this. Having TI as a dominant function could create a lot of enemies around you. Again, because a lot of people are almost afraid of how freakishly on point you can be and how well structured you are within the brain, and your person, and how you relate to the world, how you judge the world is incredibly objective. It's logical. It's a rational function, unlike the perceiving functions of intuition and sensing, which are irrational, meaning I understand that to mean, it's, you don't have to think about it, just like breathing, it just occurs. And then our judging functions take that information that's pulled in by our perceiving functions, and with TI, man, you're, again, it's objective, it's logical, it's rational, it's fair, um, and it just makes sense to a TI user, but not an FI user. An FI user is I had a fascination, a deadly, like moth to the flame fascination with FI users that I was unaware of. In fact, my first trauma bond I had, where I woke up to the idea of attachment theory, and woke up to the idea of the empath narcissist paradigm, was with an INFP. Or they could have been an ENFP. Um, and they were attracted to me, and vice versa, because I was learning everything about cognitive functions. And FI is sort of like this mystery to me, because it's a F, or feeling function, is in my tertiary position. And when I type people and work with people through cognitive functions theory, I let me know what you guys think about this. I I no longer identify the third function with a polarity, either introverted or extroverted. I think, I believe that one should, when applying cognitive functions theory after being typed, we should keep that tertiary function without a polarity, without introverted, or because that will indicate to us it's the place in our stack where we need to go either direction. So, identifying myself to be dependent or codependent, or relying too much on FE. In fact, I used FE so much, I would use it with NE. And it's, I think it's erroneous. It's it's a better idea to understand the functions as not having to work with opposites, right? In that dominant and auxiliary position. No, trust me, you can use NE and FE together as an ENTP. And that's what I was doing. And that is like my codependent or dependent pairing, right? Yeah, no, Jolie, it's what assisted my spiritual awakening. Um, and it's why I'm MBTI certified practitioner now, just so I can. I mean, the whole certification is simply a. Um, how much did I pay for it? It was like 3 or 4 grand. 10 days, great 10 days with a great group, um, who all intend to use the MBTI for their clients in the way that it's always been used, which is, in a corporate setting, going to a small or a large business and help them better communicate and better work together. That's all good. That's great. But what I do is, for each of my clients, to identify through the step one process. I think it was just like a 56-page report. It's so detailed. It's so much better than the fucking crap that you get on 16personalities.com. That whole test, and it's a test over there at 16 personalities, is based on, I believe the questions are based on ocean. It's the five, or the big five. So they determine your type through questions designed from, how much extroversion you have, how much conscientiousness and neuroticism do you have. And then they'll plug into the 16 personalities the best type. And there you go. And they'll give you a bunch of language and descriptions. But why I urge everyone, even if you know your type and you're most likely spot on with the type, I urge everyone to take step 1 and step 2. Why? Because it's going to give you very specific details about each type. And specifically, like step 2 is amazing because there are 20, what's the word? So each function, so you have your introversion, extroversion measured, and there are 5 examples and lines where you are shown how often you are in your type with extroversion or introversion, how often you're right in the middle, and how often you're out of your type. And there are, like I said, there are 20 of those examples of using the 4 functions plus extroversion and introversion. I hope I'm making this make sense. What it showed me was, and my results were, of the 20, I had 10 within the middle range, which would indicate that I didn't know what the fuck or who I was. But that wasn't true, because that's sort of like a given for an ENTP, or it's a given for my Enneagram type, which is the counterphobic sexual 6. These types are said to be the most challenged at typing themselves, right? It's because of our flexibility of the cognitive functions. It's because we are a thinking type. And I found that I had 10 of the 20 that were scored right in the middle, which would also indicate to me how flexible I had become on those scales, and then looking at the specific ones, they all pointed to situations where I had done the shadow work. I had done the work to develop more flexibility. Because as I said, I started as an INTP, but early on in my early 20s, I consciously made the effort to be more extroverted. And lo and behold, by the time I get into my 30s, 40s, and now I'm just past 50, there was proof in that step 2, in the results of my step 2, that I had done the work, and I literally teared up, and I was like, eureka and bingo! I'm going to use step 1 and step 2 with my clients to identify where they're stuck. So we know clearly if you of all the, and most of the people in the 10-day course to be certified at MBTI, which is a certification which just allows you to administer the assessment. It's not a test. And that's another clear distinction between the 16 personalities bullshit, and that instrument, and the actual MBTI. Most of the people in the certification class, might score 5 within the middle, or they might have a couple that were out of type, but most were in type, and that's clear indication of where you can become more flexible, where you, as an ENTP, for example, need more introverted sensing in your life, which is you know, relying on the old, relying on memory and what you've done in the past in similar situations uh, that also yielded certain results. The Kraken, yeah, everybody has dragon energy. I mean, that's where the I mean, the Kraken was actually a Titan, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, and Titans, and then gods and goddesses are all that energy. That mythology is all found within the planets. Is it? Is it? I think Uranus. Speaking of Uranus, that was the father of Zeus, or brother, or is equivalent to Kronos. So it's all interrelated. And so when Uranus moved into the sign of Taurus, not to digress, but I hope you understood the point of step one and step two of the MBTI assessment. It really does identify your preferences, and that's key. It's not, typology, and this typology system and all typology systems are really just based on our astrology, believe it or not. For example, the so-called Enneagram, that's bullshit. Russ Hudson and all the big practitioners and teachers of the Enneagram know, and they've known probably since Oscar Chazo brought the Enneagram to the United States in 1971, to the state of California, and started these classes or lectures of introduction, of introduction. Those are our houses in our zodiacal charts, 1 through 9, which are the personal houses of our charts. Or if you follow human design, um, how do you get your human design type and your human design chart? You plug in your freaking date of birth and the time of birth and location, just as you plug in the same information to get your charts. Um, yeah, I believe that, for example, Catherine Faber, who developed tri-type theory, who's also coincidentally an ENTP, I think she's probably been the has offered up one of the better advancements to Enneagram theory, um, since it came to the United States. Oh, and by the way, after Oscar Ichazo passed away or he left, um, all of his students, of which Catherine was one, and there are some other ones, they went to court to you know um, legally. The courts had to identify what information, what intellectual property could be claimed, which would be fair use, or could be personalized. Um, so I think people fighting over the rights to take this Enneagram theory and then make a buck off of it, really stunted its use in our culture, in our society. But with that said, it's probably for the best, because I know Russ Hudson. I know who's another one who actually that I've worked with Russ. I've worked with Tom. Can't remember Tom's last name. One on one, and in virtual meetings and whatnot, classes. I know they know it's totally linked to astrology. Again, like, okay, let's just take the houses and the Enneagram. Number one, Enneagram is called the reformer. The first house of our zodiac is Aries, the baby boss. This is masculine fire energy. This is the leader. And what does a reformer do but provide structure by leading, by example? Two, what's the Enneagram 2 called? Oh, I can't remember. But it corresponds to the planet Venus in the second house, ruled by Taurus. Um, on the Enneagram, I think it's said that, it's the first of the heart triad, which would make sense by talking about codependency and being an unconditional Taurus and giving of feminine energy. Second house rules money, it rules abundance, love, beauty. And the number 2 on the Enneagram is can be super toxic, I think, because for them, they are so dependent on other people that they give and give and give and don't expect anything back, or actually fear connecting and actually receiving. Um, oof. I had a very dangerous Pisces who had a lot of 2 energy in them, and yeah, like serial killer type manipulator, and also a scam artist. Anyway, then you have Enneagram 3, the achiever, which corresponds to the third house, Gemini, the twins. This is all about the mind, and how best to achieve things in our 3D reality in our world than to, use our head to formulate new ideas, new plans, and really see the height to which man can climb and become sort of like the ideal balanced masculine and feminine hemispheres of the brain, logical thought, intelligence, and communicating. That's full on number 3, the achiever. The number 3 also, the United States is pretty much a number 3 on the Enneagram. So we're always, we're learning, Jolie, how best to live in that pyramid scheme and how to climb to the very top. So we're not going to get shafted in the end when that whole scheme falls apart. So, yeah, you can continue all the way to House 9, Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. This is the planet of the higher mind. This is the planet of spirituality and expansion and so-called luck. To the Enneagram 9, the sage, the peacemaker. Um, Number 9, Sagittarius, fire energy is mutable fire energy. Fire corresponds to spirit and spirituality and also intuition. Shall I pull some cards? Since we are talking about Enneagram and MBTI, I'm going to use the Magic of Marvel Oracle deck. And speaking about demons and light, as an astrotheologian, I know there are angels and demon energy within each of our houses, and it's one of our goals in life, in this incarnation, that we make friends with both the light and the dark in each of those houses, so we can become rulers of each house. The Bible is chock full of references to houses, and that's what it's referring to, is the houses in our zodiacal chart. Did you know that each house also corresponds to a disciple of so-called Jesus? I say so-called because That wasn't his name. Um, his name's Yeshua. And yes, he was a man who lived and is the marker of the beginning of the age of Pisces. Yeshua was a Pisces, mutable water energy. That's why the fish, which represents Pisces, is also a representative of Yeshua and his energy, because Yeshua became an ascended master. And then, the Jews and then the Roman Empire um, basically killed off the knowledge that Yeshua was bringing to the world, which was God isn't found in a church, God isn't found in the Bible, although the way to God can be found in the Word, most definitely. But Yeshua himself became an ascended master in the eyes of the world around him at the time, the Roman Empire and the Jews. They saw a single solitary soul become more powerful, um, become connected to Yahweh like no other soul had before. And then Yeshua became teaching others how to do the same. And a lot had to do with getting control of your demons and working with your angels in each of your houses. First card out, Iron Man. What are you really protecting? Tony Stark, with all his wit and incredible intelligence and technology, has built this iron suit to protect what? His vulnerability, his heart. And the heart, once you connect with the heart chakra, that's how you can, this is what it means to go in, is connecting and building a relationship with that heart chakra, growing it. Um, um, it's the fourth chakra, it's air energy. So shout out to all my Aquariuses. And it corresponds to the number 6, because 1 through 5 is, each arm, each leg, and the head, which is all ego. This is the last place, or the only place. Well, in those first 5 places, that's where demon energy really thrives, especially here in the head, in the ego, in thought, in images. Think of Hollywood and the manipulation of images, or even in um, um, adult entertainment, adult visual entertainment, right? Everything visual um, creates or invokes an emotion, or I like to consider them as triggers. So the 6th house, ruled by Virgo, mutable earth energy, is for me all about where thoughts and emotions should be rooted in the body. Um, because after the head, which is number 5, ego, you add the torso. And when you add the torso, you add the heart, which is emotion, and air energy, the element of air. But right below the heart is the spleen. And this is where fear um, lives in our bodies. So, again, the notion of Virgo energy in the 6th house is when those thoughts meld into or work with or are triggering each other. So how often does a thought trigger an emotion, and then that emotion will trigger a new thought, and you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? It's all about grounding those thoughts and emotions, those triggers, into the body, where they can be absorbed and grounded, and that back and forth can be stopped. No, you're right. No, absolutely. Get thee behind me, Satan, is for me I mean, I often describe my whole dark night of the soul and my spiritual awakening as well. I have some videos on relapsing. I struggled with addictions for most of my life because I was surrounded by them. And a lot of these, toxic substances, whether it be visual stimulus, adult entertainment, or ingestibles, were pretty much like handed to me um, when I was very, very young. I had a Scorpio mother. So, Scorpio is sex, death, and transformation, and the opposite sign of Taurus. So there was a lot of love hate in that relationship. Um, but in my videos where I talk about relapsing, around the time I had my spiritual awakening, when Uranus moved into the sign of Taurus, um, I was struggling with certain addictions. And one of them was I wanted to get away from adult entertainment. Um, so also just, eating well, stop smoking cigarettes, marijuana, whatever it was. I was living in Alaska at the time, and marijuana went legal in 2015. So there was like dispensaries on well curated dispensaries where you can get like just a huge assortment, and they had um, you know they had descriptions and the THC levels and the cannabinoids that were in them. I mean, it was just really highly scientific, and you can go in there and try so many different strains and hybrids. Anyway, um, I wanted to get away from, let's say, adult entertainment, which was just one of the things that I was working on, and I would consider using adult entertainment when I was pleasuring myself, to be a relapse. Once I said, okay, you know what, this is a demon. This has more control over me. Why isn't that I can't just be by myself, or even concentrate on myself, or look at myself when I'm pleasuring myself, rather than having to watch some others. Um, well, I told myself, okay, why am I doing this? Why is this so pleasurable? Why am I attached to this form of getting off more than others? Um, so each time I would relapse, rather than go in, surrender to it, and have it like take over me, and then after completing the mission, um, feel guilty and ashamed and beat myself up a second time with the guilt, of even taking part or using it. um, I decided, okay, if I'm going to use it, I'm going to use it. Kind of like driving a car. When you're learning to drive a car, drive the car. Don't let the car drive you. Or in other words, don't be afraid as you're driving a car or learning to drive a car, because that fear, which are total demons, right, makes you a shitty driver. You're more prone to accidents if you learn to drive a car with any amount of fear. The car is essentially driving you. So drive the car, which means that I'm an excellent driver, actually, and I love to drive a car. Um, and one becomes almost like a professional when the fear is removed. So I equate that to um, adult entertainment in the way that whenever I would use it to get off, I was hyper vigilant. Having NE, extroverted intuition, and introverted thinking as my dominant functions is definitely a plus. It gave me an advantage to this hypervigilance, and me being a counterphobic 6 on the Enneagram, certainly. But while I was partaking in this particular activity, I was really hyper aware of, okay, what's exciting about this? What is keeping me like in this moment with this freaking video? What's going on in my body? What thoughts do I have? Or, how am I being triggered? Now, this was a process where I was doing this over and over long enough so I could like comprise a list of solid things that were occurring each time I relapsed. And I just realized that there was this, it was almost as if I was putting myself in the position of one of the participants in the adult entertainment, and thereby being empathic. And I think we're all empaths to one degree or the other. Narcissists less so, right? But everybody has a capacity to feel, um, and that's what I was doing. And then that that just that made me feel not bad at myself. I didn't beat myself up as I was feeding myself. No, it was more like this is this isn't real. It's not. I don't know. It just didn't make me feel as human, and it made me look to um, wanting like human contact, um, rather than this superficial feeling of being connected to another human sexually. Does that make sense? Well, yeah, no, it's I know women um, use it as well, but I think men use it because it gives us a complete sense of 100% being in control, right? Uh, I just didn't want to say PORN, so I use adult entertainment. Plus, I was in a play. I originated a role off Broadway with you probably would know Danny Aiello and Jeannie Berlin, directed by Stanley Donen, who was dating the writer Elaine May at the time. Um, anyway, it was called Adult Entertainment, and it was based on a public access television show called The Robin Bird Show, which I don't know if it's still around, but in New York City, in Manhattan, it was televised, I think, every Saturday night. And public access in New York City at the time, again, I don't know if this still goes on, you could see full on nudity. Um, the only exception would be men. You couldn't see penetration, of course, um, and you couldn't see an erect phallus. So Robin Bird, who was like this ex porn star and kind of spacey and out of it, would be the host, and she would have whatever porn star or erotic dancer who was in New York, um, performing at some of the clubs in Jersey or Long Island, come into the studio, which is like this I don't know if you would call it a studio, and perform a dance, like, and get totally nude and show everything, even create certain angles for the audience or the camera to view, as long as there wasn't any penetration or erection. And then she would interview the stars afterwards. Anyway, this play I did was based on that show. It was a very, very funny show. Um, but yeah, I use that term in part because of my experience in that show. And I played a Yale drama director graduate who was hired by the producer, played by Danny Aiello, um, to come in and teach Shakespeare and classic texts to these porn stars, because their former director slash producer had died, um, and sort of revitalize the production company that produced these these porns. Mary Birdsong, who was on Reno 9, I think it's Reno 911, was in it, and uh, Elaine's daughter Gina Berlin, who's been in films mostly like in the '60s and '70s. I think she was nominated for an Oscar once or twice. Anyway, it was a blast. We ran off Broadway in the Lower East Side for about 6 months, and this was right after 9/11. Um, and we closed. We had a chance to go to Broadway to do it. It really was a funny show, um, but we had to close because of basically 9/11. Our theater was down by the UN. I remember one of the last weeks that we were open, right before we closed, there was a big march, because what was it? We didn't close because of 9/11. We closed because of our invasion of Iraq. Or, yeah, yeah. Anyway, good times, good times. Yeah, Reno 9/11. Have you ever been to Reno? It's funny. It's like a yeah. It's right outside Lake Tahoe. It's like Vegas in the mountains. I was once hired to drive this old woman, this old rich woman, who was a client at this optometrist office that I worked for. This optometrist doctor's office slash, we would sell this woman very, very expensive glasses, and she would buy many, many pairs. Anyway, she was looking for a driver because she was going to meet um, a love interest of hers. And this woman is like in her 70s, maybe, early 80s, loaded, a widow. Um, and so I said yes. Can't remember what I was paid, but we get into her big freaking Cadillac. And the internet wasn't a big thing. Certainly Google Maps wasn't a thing. So I didn't really bother to map the situation out. I get her there just fine. We drove up through Tahoe and then into Reno. Let her off. Met this beau of hers. This guy was the gayest dude, um, uh, and much younger. And red flags were going off. Of course, I didn't say anything to her. But when I went to pick her up and take her back, we drove through Bishop back to Bakersfield, California, where I was pretty much raised. It's in Southern California. And I lost my way. I think we stopped to eat in Bishop, and I went back the way we had come, back to Reno. And I was driving. It was in the middle of the night. I was driving for probably like 2 hours. I was like, wait, this feels familiar. Around the time I copped to it and turned around, headed in the right direction, she woke up and she was pissed, and I was sort of pissed. I was like, fuck it, what are we gonna do? But she had to go to the bathroom, and we were in a stretch of highway where there were no rest stops, there were no gas stations or anything. And she couldn't hold it any longer. So I'd pull over, and these semis are going by just like it was crazy. Middle of the night, and she said, "Stop the car! Stop the car! Stop the car! I'm going to go out that road." And we were there was no side of the road. Um, there was enough to pull off and get the car off out of the lane, but beyond that, it was like this steep, like like grade of land. And oh my God, to see this woman crouch down, pull her panties down, in her leggings or whatever she was wearing. I think it was in a skirt, and go to the bathroom was freaking hilarious. All the while, I'm like, oh my God, she's going to fall and tumble down. Um, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, very much Reno. My gosh. Wow, 110.54. Hey, I'm glad you popped in. Hi, Martine. Are you joining us from France? Whereabouts? I know Peter Frechette. He's an actor. Bottom of the deck, we have Jubilee. Be bright, be fearless, even in the dark. Just like that old lady, she was fearless. It was, the bright headlights of the semis rolling by as she crouched down to go pee. She was fearless, and she was not afraid of rolling off into the dark of the mountainside outside of good old Reno. Yeah, I think I'm going to finish it up here. It's 3:23, and exactly. Oh my goodness. And it wasn't such a wee. It seemed like, for me, it seemed to last forever. All the while, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna lose her footing, or have to, step, she's gonna pee on her foot. She's gonna get pissed, and then she's gonna fall, roll down this mountainside. Fortunately, it never happened. But boy, oh boy, was she pissed all the ride home. Uh, Such is life. I have a great story. Oh, we actually. Oh my goodness. Oh, she was a dear old lady who was just sort of clueless, who had a lot of money, and she was single and alone, had been for a while. A bit of an egoist, because on our trip, or on our ride up there to drop her off in Reno, we stopped by this artist place outside of Lake Tahoe, and he had painted a portrait of her. It was all right. It wasn't anything spectacular, but you know, I guess that's what you do when you have money, and you're a lonely person. To support yourself is kind of feed that ego, and buy younger gay men to be your beard. All right. Peace to you all, and I'm glad you joined me. And we'll do this again. Namaste, all. Have a great weekend too. Ruler of the day is Venus, so get out and nurture yourself. Thank God it's Friday. Tomorrow the ruler is Saturn, so make sure you get your laundry done and your chores around the house, but mix it with some good time to relax as well, for Sunday. And Monday, I don't know. I know Western civilization, they start our fucking work days on Monday, which is so like such a great way to fuck us all up, because Monday should be a day where we're introspective, journaling. Um, I try to observe as much silence on Mondays. I get a lot of downloads. I was born on a Monday, which also helps, but the moon cycles are real, and I think we should be working 4 days a week, beginning on Tuesday, which was ruled by Mars and the day of action. Wednesday is Mercury, that's about communication, and Thursday is Jupiter, or Thor's day, Jupiter, which is about expansion and higher learning, and where action and communication come together, right? And then Friday, that's Venus, um, and the last day of the working week, as far as I'm considered. All right. Good night, Jolie. And good night to you all. And I'll see you hopefully in the next live stream.